Now retired homicide sergeant turned police chief of Cumberland of the Indianapolis Police Department, Mike Crook, sat on the back porch of his home, his mind consumed by a single unsolved case, the enigma of the I-70 serial killer. The mystery of that elusive figure, his identity, his whereabouts, lingered in his thoughts. Is he still at large, or has he met his end, buried in an unmarked grave? Hey, what's up, guys? Remember me? Of course you don't. Anyway, as I promised in my last video, I will be delving into some chilling true stories of Indiana. Brace yourselves, because today we're diving into a particular bone-chilling one. Welcome to Some Stories of Mine and the series This Happened Here. As promised, I will share the story of the I-70 killer from the perspective of one of the lead detectives who was on the case, Mike Crook. That was how I saw it for this story. I have quite a few stories from there. We went there on the Memorial Weekend, stayed 3 nights, and gathered all we could. I promise these stories are really something else. CB went all out for you guys, and I have to now bring it. Anyway, if you like our efforts, click the like button. Remember to subscribe. I love to see my subscriber numbers going up, unlike the number on my scale. So click that subscribe button now and share this video with those you think will also like it. Also, don't leave without boosting my ego with a nice comment. I live for it. I am LT Bartek. Now here's the story of the I-70 killer of Indiana. Mike Crook swung his legs from the stool where he had them propped up and rested his elbows on his knees. Bending forward, he looked at the darkening grout on the tile beneath his sandals' feet. A sigh escaped his lips, and he looked up, searching the trees for the bird singing its heart out. Though retired, and having caught dozens of killer over 30+ years on the force, he had one regret. He was not the one to get this monster. His initial thought of wrapping up Robin Falder's killer, the possible first victim, was not as easy as he had initially thought. He leaned back again in his lounge chair and exhaled noisily, his palms resting on his knees. He looked ahead, not seeing the fence before him. His mind wandered back to the I-70's first victim, Robin Falder. He remembered everything. It was April 8th, 1992, a warm Wednesday afternoon in Indianapolis. He got the call and rushed over to the strip mall where the Payless store was. Showing his ID, he was led through and was directed to the back of the building, where Robin lay face down on the cold laminate floor, a bullet to the back of the head, blood pooling around her brunette hair, and his heart sank. She was a pretty young lady who had her whole life ahead of her, but here she was, gunned down. And for what? By whom? He remembered thinking to himself, well, this will probably come pretty quick, because a single female victim and just the residents around here and businesses and so forth, somebody probably had seen something. No, we're good. Somebody will call in or something. But that was not to be. There were no eyewitnesses and no phone calls. But something else did happen. 3 days later, on April 11, he was called out again. 2 more women had been shot to death inside a bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas. In the back of the storeroom lay Patricia Magers, 32, and Patricia Smith, 23. The shop was located right off I-70. The ammo was the same as Robin's. While still working on this murder case and unknown to him, on April 27th, Michael McCone, a 40-year-old man, was killed in the same way as the ladies. He too was shot to death in his mother's ceramic store in Terre Haute, Indiana. he was alone in the store. The killer struck again a few days later on May 3rd. The killer had gone into Boot Village, a shoe store in St. Charles, Missouri, just outside St. Louis, and had shot and killed Nancy Kiltmiller, a 24-year-old woman in the prime of her life. Mike remembered getting the call from a detective who had matched the ballistic of the St. Charles murder weapon with the gun used to kill Folder. The conversation played in his head like it was yesterday. "Think we might have a match with yours," he remembered the detective saying. He continued, "Are you aware of Terre Haute's murder?" he asked. I said, "Well, no, we didn't know about Terre Haute." I asked him to come over, and he did, taking with them the evidence so our lab could examine the ballistic and compare them to ours. The ballistics were a match. We were dealing with a serial killer who was targeting females. I took all their pictures and pulled up a board. I pinned them up to get a better look and found that they all had brunette hair. 4 out of 5 were females. But then I looked closer at Michael, who also had shoulder-length brunette hair. I remembered thinking, was he killed because the killer had mistaken him for a female? Then on May 7th, only a few days later, there was another victim. Sarah Blessing, another woman, found dead at a gift shop in Raytown, Missouri, just outside Kansas City. The case was keeping him up at night, only a few less now that he was retired, because he couldn't wrap his brain around the reason for the killings. Why were these people selected? The only similarities he could see were that they all had the same color hair. They were all alone in their place of business, and the locations were all close to I-70 and I-35. Other than that, there was nothing else. The businesses they were all in were all different. Age was different, the location was different. He didn't rob or rape them, he just shot them and left. Was he just killing them for the thrill of it? He found that was the case when a video surfaced later showing a killer, who they believed to be the I-70 killer, doing a jig after leaving the store after taking another victim's life, Billy Brosman. He had taken him to the back of the store and had shot him to death. After all these killings, all they had for evidence were 2 eyewitnesses and an FBI psychological markup that stated that this killer started with Robin Fulder, who they believed was a person from his home state of Indiana. Witnesses said he was a white male in his mid-30s, about 5 feet 7 inches tall, and possibly weighing between 140 and 160 pounds. They described him as having short, light brown to auburn hair and some facial stubble. Witnesses also stated that he looked like he spent a lot of time outdoors because his skin was leathery from too much sun exposure. After May 7, 1992, the killings stopped. Frustrated at himself for not catching this monster, he combed the streets, searching every angle but coming up short. Then 1 year later it started again, and soon 2 more people were dead, and 1 survived. Mary Ann Glasscook was 51 when she was shot to death in her store in Fort Worth, Texas on September 25, 1993. Amy Vest was only 21 when she was killed on November 1, 1993 in Arlington, Texas. Vicki Webb, 35, from Houston, is the only survivor who still lives with a bullet encased between the C2 and C3 in her neck. She had only lived by playing dead after being shot in the back, and after getting hit in the neck she fell, The killer then jumped over the counter with the intention of shooting her again, but the gun had jammed and he left. Mike remembered even driving the killer's route based on the points where he had got off and killed. He had traveled as far west as Kansas to Houston, reading traffic tickets, hotel ledgers, and toll receipts to see if any name repeated along this route, but none did. Well, a couple did, but they were dismissed. At one point, there were speculations that this might be the work of a long-haul trucker, but that was also dismissed, based on the fact that no one had seen a big rig at any of the murder locations, and the killer needed to make quick getaways, and a truck would most likely get attention, so they were looking for something smaller. He stood up and stretched, then turned to go inside. The weight of this case weighed on his shoulders as he closed the door to the outside. It was time for supper, something he had control over. He had spent tens of thousands of hours on this case while on the force, and he can't turn off the thoughts about it to this day. All the evidence and the faces of the victims still haunt his dreams and waking moments. Where is this monster? Why did he kill these people? But on days like this, he was forced to push them away. Now he needed to concentrate on making his meal. He pushed the I-70 killer to the back of his mind, hoping that with the advancement of new technologies or a confession, this monster will be caught. Every now and again, he would physically look at all the evidence, and all he could do for now was hope that someday this monster would be caught and that he would be there to witness it, or better yet, the monster would be dead and he could walk in his grave. To this day, this case remains unsolved, and no one has yet come forward with any new evidence. Monsters like this are still out there, but there are still a lot of good people around. Keep your head on a swivel, but don't get mistrustful. There is still a lot of good in this world. This story is sad indeed, and my heart goes out to all affected by the deaths of their loved ones. I just hope that someday, somewhere, we'll find out who this I-70 killer is. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Come back next week for another story about the beautiful state of Indiana, one you won't want to miss. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. You know I love to hear from you. Also remember to love yourself and others. And I'll catch up with you on the next one. Love you. Bye.